This is a brunch pre-Oscars mini podcast that contains spoilers, but we can't imagine you care if you haven't seen the movie and you're afraid of what, Pete?
Spoilers.
There's no way you would logically seek out a what?
Movie.
Podcast about the
Movie.
Yeah. Let us begin. Once upon a time in Hollywood, a.k.a. I heard there's a twist, a.k.a. I bought a cigarette dipped in acid.
Brad Pitt pops that top.
I fought Bruce Lee.
And finally, feet.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's what you think, though. A.k.a. I had a daughter with Ethan Hawke. She is in this movie. A.k.a. Bad Times at the Dalton residence. A.k.a. I forgot Emile Hirsch is in this movie. A.k.a. totally forgot about Emile Hirsch entirely. Shout out Emile Hirsch. A.k.a.
Oh, that's problematic.
Why? Oh, is Emile Hirsch was
canceled?
Oh, he was canceled?
He choked out a female executive at a Hollywood party.
That's right. All right, just got one quick two-parter.
Well, please go on to divert from that.
I heard an insufficient number of lines from Margot Robbie and asked Quentin Tarantino about it, a.k.a. he rejected my hypothesis. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is Quentin Tarantino's love letter to late 1960s Hollywood. Everything's a love letter now, by the way. I didn't think that when I jotted that down. Everything now is a love letter. Beyonce's...
Did you come up with that yourself, though?
Well, that's what you would call this movie.
Yeah, I just figured you stole that from somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure that during we should do Oscars prop bet. Will Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, or will a movie be referred to as a love letter?
I would take those. It would be significant odds.
Oscar odds are always significant, so this would be like minus 4,000.
Yes. Yeah.
It's definitely going to be referred to as a love letter. Anyway, it's Quentin Tarantino's love letter to late 1960s Hollywood. It follows fictional actor Rick Dalton struggling to stay relevant and is set in the final days, weeks, months of Sharon Tate's life. Dalton's stunt double, Cliff Booth, a rough around the edges Yank, serves as Dalton's driver and borderline caretaker because Rick is a big old puddle.
That is true.
That's
I have one factual error in the that synopsis.
That he's literally not a puddle?
I heard there's a twist.
Ooh, there you go. Well, if you're afraid of spoilers, can't imagine you'd logically seek out a podcast talking about it. Anyway, this is a love letter. I think what I'm trying... Oh, by the way, I misspoke. This is Quentin Tarantino's love letter to late 1990s.
Oh, yes, that's correct, yeah. Not to be mistaken with Ford versus Ferrari, which is about the
1996 Le Mans. So, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, they're just going to Tower Records.
Just a lot of going throughout your day.
Going to Tower Records, rooting for the Lakers. What else do you do in the 90s?
Just catch up on the hip-hop feuds, the East Coast, West Coast hip-hop feuds.
A lot of TRL on 3 hours after everybody.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, that's right.
Going to tapings of the Tonight Show was in California back then, I think.
How about The Price is Right? Price is Right.
Going
big
to
time.
Price is Right tapings.
Big time tapings in
Sharon Tate goes
California,
but she never gets called to come on down.
Ooh,
yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Quentin Tarantino hates Margot Robbie.
That's true. Can't let her get any lines in.
So, in all seriousness, this movie falls into the category of the classics that came from this year. I think that I really, really loved this movie when I first saw it. And I did. I remember thinking it was I don't know if I would say really, really loved. Yeah. I loved it. I thought it was really good. And I remember I thought it was one of the better movies at that point, but I was like, as more stuff comes out, maybe it'll get knocked down. So as more things came out and we saw really, really good movies, I just naturally kind of put it in the 5 to 6-ish range for me of the best pick noms. Having rewatched it and having rewatched a bunch of the best pick noms now, I'll tell you what, I've got this as high as we're not going to reveal our. When are we going to reveal our final rankings? The for the week's podcast? Do you think?
Yeah, this week. Yeah.
Okay. I've got it as high as number 2.
Wow,
no worse than number 4.
I mean, I think
2 to 4 is like a
I think
a sweet spot.
I think it would probably end up in there for me, but I don't know if I'm gonna go. I'm definitely not gonna go 2. I know my 1-2 punch.
You know your number 2. So are your 1-2 Parasite and 1917?
Right.
My 1 is locked in Parasite, and then my 2 through 4, 1917, Little Women, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And every 5 seconds, I'm shuffling them. I just watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood again, though, and I died of a charm attack.
Yeah, I mean, I rewatched the first hour and 15 minutes of it, and like I've always liked the movie, and it never totally like knocked my socks off in the sense that like this is the best movie of the year or whatever.
Well,
like,
then it didn't do its job.
Why?
This movie's all about
no socks.
That's true. If there's one thing
if you got
Tarantino wants to do,
Tarantino rejects your hypothesis.
That's very true. I'm firmly locked in with it being like number 3 for me.
Oh, that's awesome, though.
Yeah, no, that's a
right.
really good thing, especially in a strong year. But it was never like, this movie is amazing. This movie changed my life. I will say I do think that it's a movie that will probably age super well.
Definitely.
And like get better the more times you watch it. Like I've heard from a bunch of people that like, the more that you watch it, like the more you take away from the dynamics between the characters, the more you take away from like just certain scenes. And I got that in the first like hour and 15 minutes. I was like, I didn't remember this scene because there's so much to take in the first time that you watch it. And like my rewatch, as far as it's going now, like I'm really enjoying it.
Dude, wait until you get to the final act of this movie.
Obviously,
has some of the best scenes and lines of the entire year. Cliff sitting with the dog as he's deciding out loud whether or not to smoke the acid-dipped cigarette is like, I was sweating. He was, I tell you what, no socks, no pants. I had nothing going on watching that. And then the very next scene is when Rick hears the muffler of the Manson family, and he goes out to yell at them. But when he goes out to yell at them, he grabs... He's making margaritas. He grabs...
As he does throughout this entire fucking movie.
Yeah, I just love the voiceover there, though. At roughly like 9:30 p.m., a completely drunk Rick Dalton began making frozen margaritas. But as he's going to go yell at them, go outside to yell at them, he grabs the blender jar and brings it with him as he's like, it's not like it was
he can't
in his hand. He just he was like, I need this to go yell at them.
It's basically like Rick Dalton in this movie treats like his margaritas like we all treat cell phones in 2020.
Do you have
like
your cell phone?
Yeah, you can't you literally cannot go anywhere or be like more than 10 feet away from your cell phone without feeling uncomfortable. He can't be more than 10 feet away from a margarita.
And then after all the shit goes down, obviously the deaths scene, which, if you haven't seen it, a little bit of a twist. Don't mind, like while we're talking about alcoholic beverages, this one's served with a twist.
This one's served with a twist.
After all the cops leave and everything, Rick's talking to Jay Sebring next door at the gate, and Jay Sebring's like, dude, what happened? And he's like, some hippies, man. They came over and they...
Just an undersell of the millennium.
The biggest undersell, yeah. And he's like, well, were they trying to rob you? He's like, I don't know. They might have been on drugs or something. They tried to kill my wife and my buddy. My buddy killed 2 of them. I torched the 3rd. And Jay Sebring is just like freaking out at this as the story of how he is murdered is being told to him.
Yeah.
And he's just like, whoa, man, that's out of sight. Like, oh, shit. And
There's
then he,
so much subtle humor in this movie that it's amazing.
And then, like, from the intercom or whatever, you hear Sharon Tate also killed by these people. Like, hey, what happened? Is everything okay? And he's like, yeah, everything's fine. Like, some people just tried to kill our next door neighbor, but like everything's good now. And then they goes over and like they have a good time.
Yeah, it's just like a blip in the radar of these people's lives.
Weird
it's very
night, man.
funny.
Hey, 1990s Hollywood.
There's so
crazy.
many. There are so many things that this movie does that are like it's so subtle but so funny. Like making Bruce Lee out to be a colossal asshole was so funny.
Was that received as problematic?
I don't know, but I thought it was hilarious.
I could see how it would be. It was I don't know much about Bruce Lee. That was the most heightened version of Bruce Lee I could imagine. But the line about I can't fight you, my hands are registered as lethal weapons. If we get in a fight,
and then him mansplaining manslaughter.
Yeah, if we get in a fight and you die, I'd go to jail.
He's like,
if you get in a fight with anyone and they die, you go to jail. That's what manslaughter is called.
it was so good.
Terrific. All the performances are awesome. Leo's really good. Brad Pitt, awesome. We kicked around it the first time. I remember you weren't.
I still don't really get it.
Yeah,
I still don't really get it. Like,
but you know what? Brad Pitt came around to your line of thinking. He said it was the easiest role he's ever played.
He was like, I basically played myself.
He said, I just had to pop my shirt off and get high and have
not get along with
me.
my life. Yeah,
yeah. So I don't totally disagree with that. I if I recall correctly, your hypothesis was that Brad Pitt always plays Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
And I guess I haven't seen enough movies in my time to know whether or not that's the case. I do know he was made to play this role.
100%.
No one was going to.
That role was written for Brad Pitt. I guarantee it. But like, I mean, that's not to say that Brad Pitt didn't do a good job in this role. Like, I didn't watch the movie being like, that's Brad Pitt.
Right.
I was like legitimately seeing him as Cliff Booth, but. Like, I guess I just didn't understand, like, what everybody else saw and, like, the subtle things that made people go crazy over this performance.
You mentioned that I also liked it way more on the second watch. Like I said, really liked it the first watch. Second watch, I was like, okay, this is a classic. He was so much better and so much more charming on the second watch. I remember getting a little bit of Cliff Booth fatigue after this movie came out, and everybody was like, Cliff Booth fixing the antenna ... heart or something. And I was like, please, would you cut it out?
Yeah.
But then I was watching this, I was like, this is a really, really good scene. And then I felt the way about the scene with the dog and the acid cigarette.
Yeah.
And his scene with the Manson girl who.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I'm not too young to fuck you, but you're too old to fuck me.
Yeah.
Tell you what I'm too old to do. Go to jail for poontang.
So good.
Not to mention, he's like, prison's been chasing me my whole life.
Yep.
And when it catches me, no offense, it ain't gonna be because of you. That's not a terrible Cliff Booth I've done.
No,
there.
I think that's pretty solid. Right
Cliff
off the
Booth.
top of your head.
Yeah.
I also think you got to mention the fact that Cliff Booth is a fit king in this movie.
Oh yeah.
I mean the yellow button down with the champion shirt. That is going to be a look. Like an all-time Hollywood look.
And back in the 90s when he wore that
Yes.
champion shirt, very cheap. Mm-hmm. Trying to put that fit together in 2020, good luck, pal.
Right.
Hope you got hundos.
Yeah, hope you got
You're
an
gonna
American or what's it called?
You're going to need Smart Pock because that thing's going to cost you Hyundais.
Jesus Christ. I hope you got a Urban Outfitters gift card because that will cost you $95.
Have we discussed that there still is a cheap champion that exists? It's all the same company, but like you can find a shitty $5 t-shirt that has like the C, or you can get bad sweatpants that has the champion logo on it. But if you want a shirt that says champion across it, $800.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's so expensive. The performances throughout this movie, though, awesome. Mentioned Leo, mentioned Brad Pitt. Margot Robbie had a very important role, but I think a very difficult role because so much of this, Cliff Booth and Rick Dalton are made up.
You see,
What's that?
she doesn't talk very much. So
Bad job. Then I guess she's a bad actress.
exactly.
I wish Margot Robbie screamed at that asshole.
Well,
I don't
luckily,
mean to call that person an asshole, but that was a real
luckily for
asshole
her
question.
Quentin Tarantino was ready.
Oh, he was ready to be like, hey, before anyone starts thinking anyone's an asshole, right here.
I do love that the question was for Margot Robbie about not being able to talk, and Quentin Tarantino's response was cutting her off and not allowing her to talk.
If memory serves, it was to both of them.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah. But as she was asking it, he was staring daggers at her.
Quentin, you have put Margot Robbie, a very talented actor, in your film. She was in with Leonardo in Wolf of Wall Street. I, Tonya. This is a person with a great deal of acting talent, and yet you haven't really given her many lines in the movie. And I wondered, I guess that was a deliberate choice on your part, and I just wanted to know why that was, that we don't hear her actually speaking very much. And Margot, I wanted you to also comment about being in the film in this part.
Well, I just reject your hypotheses.
Right. Like I said earlier, I always look to the character and what the character is supposed to serve to the story. I think the moments that I got on screen gave an opportunity to honor Sharon and the lightness. I don't think it was intended to delve deeper than, like Brad also mentioned, I think the tragedy ultimately was the loss of innocence, and to really show those wonderful sides of her, I think could be adequately done without speaking. I did feel like I got a lot of time to explore the character, even without dialogue specifically, which is an interesting thing because I often do look to the interaction with other characters to inform me on the character. Rarely do I get an opportunity to spend so much time on my own as a character, going through a day-to-day existence. That was actually an interesting thing for me to do as an actor. I actually really appreciated the exercise and felt that I could deliver what I wanted to on screen.
I mean, just the suggestion that somebody can't have an important role without like having X number of lines or like X number of lines more than another character.
And I don't begrudge somebody for noticing, for not necessarily being on the lookout, but noticing it more with, hey, this movie stars 3 A-listers.
2 of them are male.
As fate would have it,
yeah.
The woman had the fewest lines.
Yeah.
Like I understand seeing that and taking and having that takeaway. Mm-hmm. But I mean, ultimately, and this ties back into it. This movie was about Sharon Tate, or Sharon Tate was like a timeline for this movie, or that she was kind of the setting for this movie, but
I don't want to call
she
it like
had
a
to be
plot
kept
device, but like.
No, bigger than that.
Yeah, bigger than that. But like you mentioned, she served as like the functionality to move the story forward.
Definitely. But the movie very intentionally kept her at arm's length.
Right.
So making Sharon Tate interesting and making her matter to this story, I think is actually a way bigger challenge than people might. People could look at this and say, well, Margot Robbie didn't have a lot of lines, so she just had this little jerk-off part. And I think, to the contrary, it's hard to make people invested in a character that doesn't have a lot of lines and that's really only being sort of shown from a distance. But whether it's when she goes to the movies, whether it's, that's just also just Charm City.
Yeah.
When she's pregnant and at dinner, like you're into all of her scenes.
Also, I do think that it serves as to pique your interest, especially on first watch, because like what the story is, like Sharon Tate's story and how that ends. And as you're going through the movie on first watch, at least I was like, where is this going? Like what's going to play out here? Like, because she isn't a biopic of Sharon Tate.
No, definitely not.
So like
it's
keeping
the fall
her
of one person, and then his next door neighbor is on the rise.
Yeah.
Everything right is happening for her. She's kind of basking in being making waves. She wasn't the biggest star in the world, but she was
somebody trending up,
waves.
the other person trending down, and like you mentioned, they keep her at arm's length. So you know that something is going to come, and that the story is going to come to a head at some point, but you have no idea where it's going.
Right,
and I think that's interesting.
Like you said, historically, you do.
Right,
it's a Quentin Tarantino movie, and
I heard there's a twist.
He was never been afraid to kill Hitler. What, like halfway through the movie?
It was like at the end, wasn't it?
Was it at the end?
Yeah, I think it was at the end.
I don't remember that movie very well. It was good, but I remember that was a long movie that felt long. And this was a 2-hour, 40-minute movie that I didn't think about the time once.
No, well, I thought about the time, but it was more in the sense, like, again, we know this is going somewhere.
Right.
When's it going to happen? But for me, the experience of this was similar to the experience of Parasite. Parasite moved a little bit faster, but a good portion of the movie is, just taking you through this ride, and sort of like you're just hanging out with these characters, and you're not speeding towards a conclusion, and you definitely weren't speeding towards a conclusion in this movie, but it was enjoyable the entire way through.
Now with that shitty car, get a muffler, will ya?
Man, that thing hauled ass. The
Oh,
car
true.
scenes were pretty good.
When Maya Hawke took off your... I was talking about the Manson family's car.
That was like wasn't he driving like an ice cream truck at one point in that movie?
It was bad. I mean, the guy had a horse. I do remember the horse. Other performances, Pacino, whatever.
Yeah.
This is like if there were ever a year for you to think, is Al Pacino not that good?
He was good. This is a
big year for that.
He was pretty good in The Irishman.
Was he?
Yeah.
Someone on Twitter asked, was Pacino... Because I was complaining about The Irishman, probably. The Irishman. And I was like, oh, no, we'd talked about it. We were like, yeah, I don't begrudge the performances. They were fine, whatever. And someone was like, but were they? Like, was Al Pacino really good? And then I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, not particularly. He didn't... I still got socks on.
Okay.
I still got socks on for Pacino, and he was fine in this. Whatever.
Yeah.
This was
a
a nothing role. Got to shout out the kid, Julia Butters.
Great. She was great.
That's another performance where you might think, oh well, she's just the snooty kid, and she's gonna be a little know-it-all and whatever. She knows how to read. Rick Dalton doesn't probably, and that's all she does. But really, if you think about it, and this is another on second watch thing, she really, really needed to convey that she had her shit together so as to accentuate that Rick doesn't have his shit together. So as she's sitting there all, is it prim and proper?
Yeah.
Prim and proper? Mm-hmm. I was thinking primp and proper? It can't be that.
I don't think so.
Prim and pop.
Yeah, yep.
Whatever.
Right,
Prince and the Pauper. She's sitting there all pimped out, and he's just falling apart.
Yes.
Loved the scene. I don't know if anyone's been there before, but when he fucks up his lines and I've never done exactly this, but when he goes back into his trailer and he's just repeating one thing over and over again, which is bullshit. He's so mad at himself. He's like, why have to have 8 whiskey sours? This is bullshit. And he's going back and forth between yelling about why he hates himself and then just like a generic bullshit. Love it.
I mean, that scene is like the one that stood out to me other than the big twist in this movie. I mean,
get your laugh together.
The trailer scene is fucking unbelievable. But I also I forgot how good Leo played a hungover person in this movie, because the scenes where Rick is hungover, and especially the one right before he meets the little girl where he's like in the makeup trailer and he's just like really trying to get his life together after like a night of margaritas, and he's dunking his face in the ice bowl, and like he's got like this entire glazed look on his face as he's being explained the character, and then like just when he's sitting next to the girl,
Leo porn. This movie,
yeah, it is.
He gains
also
weight
this
throughout
is
the movie.
big time loogie porn.
Really?
Yeah, it's like a lot of like him trying to clear the phlegm out of his throat and spitting on the ground.
I'm
and
not crazy
like,
about that.
But it's like part of being hungover. You're just a disgusting mess, and he does a great job of playing a disgusting mess in the first half of this movie.
Well, speaking of disgusting messes, that, for all you know, wraps up our episodes, our mini episodes for the Best Picture noms. We've done 9, right?
That's correct.
So,
but
what's that?
I heard there's a twist.